Here's how to ruin your friendships in Minecraft and have fun doing it. Let's say your friend is a big fan of the ocean, but foolishly on them, they built their base right in the heart of a desert biome. Obviously, that's a pretty dry place to be, so thanks to you, you cleaned it up for them and turned their entire house into an aquarium. And folks, I'm talking the whole 9 yards. Water source blocks everywhere, seagrass, kelp, fish, you name it. And hey, speaking of that, we don't exactly want them to drown down here, so why don't you give them some form of air pocket with a sign or a door? That way, this jovial redecoration isn't exactly turning into a hit job. Building up an animal farm is a lengthy process, and it's an investment that usually pays off. But to keep those dividends from ending up in your neighbor's pockets, then a Vindicator might be your best pick. Now, like this, they aren't as interested in the pigs as they are with us, but add on a Johnny name tag, and now they'll chop up just about anything in sight. Meaning, if we place one of these inside the fence and make it invisible, your friend will have no idea how they're losing all their mobs. At least they'll have no idea until they step inside to check it out. And from there, we can successfully steal their stuff and their foodstuffs to make sure you stay on top. Who doesn't love a good maze? And while building these out of leaves and stone is a bit more common, they don't exactly raise the stakes. So if you really want to guarantee that your friend's on edge when they come back in, then all you gotta do is build a lava wall maze around them. If you're not prepared, these things are definitely a pain to navigate. Is it cruel to do? Well, I won't lie to you. It absolutely is. But is it also fun? Well, most definitely. And honestly, this might be the most cursed maze ever made ever since the Greeks were around. First, we're gonna need to get a creeper head, which is easier said than done. Means we have to deal with not one, but 2 creepers, one of them charged, and use that explosion to get our new head. But once you go through that whole rigmarole and create a noise machine like this tucked away underneath their floorboards, and every time that it sounds off, it'll play the primed creeper sound effect inside of their house, which is more than a little concerning, especially if you use something like observers to make this go off every time that they open a chest or something. They'll think there's a creeper behind them and be greeted by nothing, which seems like it would be a relief, but it's not gonna feel like one when it's happening every single time you open up a chest. Okay, so you've probably heard of the Headless Horseman, but what about the Bodiless Steve? See, after placing down some path blocks, we can throw a pig inside a minecart, hop on, and ride into the floor like so, with only our head to poke out of the top of the path, which can either startle your friends or lend to the weirdest game of soccer yet. And whichever option you choose, just make sure not to dismount the pig while you're down there. Otherwise, you'll go from an awkward situation into something a lot more uncomfortable. This post says that this might be the dumbest trap they've ever made, but I disagree. I think it's quite smart, since what happens here is that you go and shoot the center of this target block, and what used to be an inconspicuous target range will then cause this TNT minecart to roll into place, and it'll explode right behind you. So while they might have thought they had time to react to this minecart rolling in, they really had anything but. And I guess that the target range is closed for the day, and the next one, and probably the rest of the time. Alright, be honest, have you built one of these machines before, where it allows the player to adjust the XP level of their enchanting table? Well, if you or another player set one up, it's the perfect place to rig up a trap. Using the lever that controls the bookshelves, just wire a line of redstone to your kill mechanism. And since they're standing still enchanting, you can even use this to drop a dripstone guillotine on them from above. And once we break the stalactite and drop it on their head, that's a perfectly good reminder why you should never read. At least not without your head covered. Making a shop on a server is a great way to make profit. But see, where most businesses go wrong is that they sell products that actually work. And that's how we're going to increase our profit margin. Since by having a weapons, armor, or tool shop where the items are dispensed out to your friends, we can have it so that they have no idea that they're actually buying tools that are almost near broken. At least until it's too late. And to make that armor even better, give it Curse of Binding, and then they'll really be stuck with having to wear it right until its bitter end. But luckily for them, that's coming soon. And the best part is that they can't even salvage the item back in an anvil, since once it's on them, it's on them. This armor stand could be lethal. Here's why. See, if we were to stack a bunch of these statues into a pit like so, then any friend who happens to fall in can't break through them fast enough to escape. And since we can have multiple in the same spot, even if they do happen to break one, there's still so many more to deal with before they can break out, letting our potion dispensers take care of the rest. We're gonna turn this drip leaf into a deadly trap. Taken after this user, if we have a big drip leaf plant growing all the way up from bedrock, we can then have our friends chase us over it, letting us escape scot-free, while they fall into a pit and lose their stuff. Though I will say, if you're gonna do this, make sure to build it in a situation where they have to fall on it after you. Otherwise, they could just jump over it instead. While your friend might think they're safe when they disconnect from the server, the truth is anything but that, since now we know exactly where they're gonna spawn back in when they log into the world. And from there, we can be as cruel as we like. But for me personally, I think the obvious solution here is to encase them in an obsidian box and then fill it up with lava. They'll be so taken aback that there's barely any brain power left to react with. But even if they could, obsidian takes a long time to mine, and lava's a quick killer. So, good luck. This is a diamond, and this is a diamond. diamond. Emphasis on the italics. Since by going through your friend's valuables and renaming them to even just the same name, they'll no longer be able to stack up the same way. And so if they have a full inventory, this can get annoying pretty quick. Especially since the only way to undo this prank is to take their new diamonds, craft them into diamond blocks, and then uncraft those back into diamonds. Giving you a prank where even if you know how it works and how to solve it, it's still gonna take some of their time to clean it up. At some point, we've all known someone who just cuts down every single tree in sight. And of course, they never replant them either, which leads to the base looking barren and empty. So to prevent against that, let's take after this Reddit user and stick a surprise on our trees. With this, they can't see the trap, but sure enough, as soon as they chop down all the logs, they'll be treated to quite a few anvils from the sky. And then that way, even if they steal your oak, you can just grab it up with the rest of their items. Let me know if this has happened to you. You're playing on an SMP with friends, each of you making progress at the same time, until one of you gets a bit too eager and then slays the dragon by themselves. It's a frustrating realization for sure. So to keep that final destination off limits, our solution comes down to dripstone. By dropping a couple of these from a tall height, we guarantee that whoever goes through the portal next is in for a short trip. And folks, this will even work regardless of their armor, making it a perfect addition for your next manhunt trap. Killing your friend's pet is an evil prank. That's why we're not going to be the ones to do it. Rather, they will be. Since with a trap like this, we're giving our friend the choice to choose which lever they need to pull to save their pet. So which of these levers do you think is the one that's going to be able to save their pet? Yeah, I thought that one too, but not so much. Since if you really want to be cruel, you could set this up also as a fake system where regardless of which lever they pull, their pet's gonna meet the same fate, to put it lightly. And to be extra cruel, you could also have one of the levers just drop TNT on top of them, so at least they won't be losing their pet, they'll both be going to the same spot. It's just a little further away from here than they thought. Sometimes you gotta spend a little to make a lot, and this is one of those cases. Now say you were to purchase or acquire a second account. Well, tell the server owner you'll be inviting a friend of yours to join, get them whitelisted, and then once you're on and playing as the new account, simply ask the more experienced players on the server for help and handouts. Odds are that they'll give you just tools and resources for free, all of which is worthwhile. And after you milk that pity, stash it in a chest, and then give some excuse why the new account had to stop playing, letting us get back on our main account and take our newly found gifts for us. Most of the time when people go AFK in Minecraft, it's trying to get something from a farm, which is great and all, but imagine their surprise if when they go to check the farm return chest and there's no items in there. Because unbeknownst to them, you actually placed a hopper system underneath and stole all of their hard-earned work. This one might not be efficient, but it's definitely effective. And if you're willing to play a war of attrition, you could always just steal all of your friends' food and crops. That way, they're bound to always be starving. Or at the very least, they won't be able to regen. If anything, even if they're not going to starve to death through this, it'll make your job with the other ones so much simpler. And it's a good prerequisite at that. Minecraft Redstone's a beautiful thing, but it's often got an ugly side to it. And it's no secret that a lot of the redstone features that we get used to are built around bugs, or exploits that later get patched out. So if you have a little bit of redstone know-how, you could charge your friend a big fee to go through and clean up their redstone circuitry. Think of it like buying the new iPhone every fall. Is it necessary? No, but can you charge a lot for it? Absolutely. And really, the more glossy things that you add to it, the better. It's all for show, folks. The thing was completely operational before, but it's all on how you market it. Most of the time, when you get rich enough to have stacks and stacks of value blocks, you're not examining them too closely. Because let's face it, you're rich, you don't need to. So if you know someone who's reached that upper echelon of wealth, we might need to turn their ignorance into our bliss. And doing so is as simple as an anvil and some decoys. Since if we take something like yellow concrete powder and rename it to a block of gold, then even if you hover over it, it's hard to notice from a quick check. And as long as we don't leave any of the legitimate ones to compare and contrast, this subtle swap out should confuse them at the crafting grid. Having a fully powered beacon is a big flex, and one entirely made of netherite is another level. But if your friend managed to secure one of these before you did, it's not worth letting them keep that kind of treasure. So in that case, we can devalue their greatest asset without them even noticing. See, since the beacon has so many layers, we have free reign to hollow out the innermost blocks and then cover up the shell to still leave them in the dark. Or if you're worried about any suspicion that might come when their haste 2 drops down to a haste 1, then just fill in the middle blocks with something less valuable like iron, and they'll be none the wiser. When my friend wasn't looking, I switched out his dog for one of my own, but by giving our dog the same name tag and collar as theirs, it's nearly identical to the original pet, except this time he can't right-click to stop it from sitting, which will surely cause some frustration. And to take this all one step further, why not punch the friend so that their supposed man's best friend turns against them? The best place to put a trap is where you'd least expect it. And I don't know about you, but I generally don't plan on my ladder being the death of me. But after seeing this, I'll have to reconsider. Now, the setup here is actually quite simple, but I love the execution. The idea is that our victim climbs up their ladder, flips the trapdoor to exit, and then that leads to a piston to shift the wall and break all of their ladders. From there, we drop them into lava, TNT, or just about anything else to finish the job, and it's as simple as that. These bookshelves have no visual difference between the different items that you place inside. And that's where the prank comes in. Since now we can use all of those enchanted books that your friends stacked up into their enchanted bookshelves, instead fill it up with junk books like Curse of Binding and all that. Now, it's not going to trick them into accidentally putting this on their armor, but there's also no way for them to tell that you played this prank until it's too late. And then we can run off with the many books in the meantime and not have to worry about being caught. I don't think I'm breaking any new ground by saying that netherite tools are a high value item, but getting a set of our own requires a lot of time and a lot of luck. So it'd be a shame if your friend's spare set just sat there collecting dust when we could use it instead. And to fix that, we have a pretty cheap solution. As you'll notice, enchanted stone tools look virtually indistinguishable from a netherite set, meaning if we were to make some decoys and swap them in, preferably named the same way as their previous pickaxe, then as long as they don't have advanced tooltips enabled, this facade should last long enough for us to trade out what we need. We all know that one person on the server who has way too many animals at the farm, and at this point it's starting to seem like a problem. So to cut that back and give them a lesson on the importance of free range, why don't we do them a favor and continue to breed those animals? See, by overcrowding their pig pen, we guarantee that at a certain point, the entity cramming kicks in and that ruins their fun. Honey blocks are clearly a useful tool. Whether you want to keep your villagers in place, mobs out of your base, or a flying machine through space, these do the trick just fine. But their sticky qualities can just as easily be turned to the dark side. You see, with the advent of lava cauldrons in 1.17, we can pair these two concepts together and make a particularly sinister trap. Since honey blocks make jumping so difficult, when we throw one of these under a lava cauldron, suddenly, the player's no longer able to escape. And with that, this seemingly harmless block becomes one that you gotta look out for. So, if you're trying to feel like a Bond villain, this might just be your next interrogation technique. If your friend's been hyping up their new set of fully enchanted netherite armor, it can get pretty annoying, especially if you're still lagging behind and trying to get the other materials. So, to even the playing field a bit, how about we build a helmet breaker trap? As it turns out, if you put anvils like so and have them drop into a bubble stream elevator, then after enough time falling, the game actually treats it like they're falling from an immense height. And luckily for us, that means they're going to do a whole bunch of damage to your friend's helmet, meaning next time they're sure to AFK less and maybe keep their mouth shut. If you have a fear of heights, this might make you feel a little uneasy, but don't worry, because the truth is that this hole's no deeper than just having a flat sheet of paper. But the reason that it would trick you to feel that way is because by using flat colors like this black and white, you're not going to see a lot of variety between the textures, which allows us to then make this pattern, which in such a way gives the illusion of it getting deeper and deeper to the center of the hole, even though, as we can clearly tell, that's not the case. Few things in Minecraft are truly unbreakable. I mean, even bedrock can be broken in some form, and that's the unbreakable block. But while we might stand a chance of breaking blocks when we stand on steady ground, it's a different story when they're on the move. Through the help of flying machines, it's possible to make a proper working flying cage trap to take your enemies right up to build limit. But what we really should mention here is that by using blocks such as honeycomb that can't be easily mined, they'll be in for a bad time. As you can see, as the blocks keep moving, the break time keeps resetting. So if your foe doesn't have the proper kit to break it down, they'll be stuck on the one-way journey with no hope in sight. Lately, it's been a popular idea to use powdered snow buckets with a carpet over top in your drop shafts, since it is true that if you were to drop on powdered snow in this way, you won't take any fall damage. But come on, it's just too easy. You can use that same carpet to cover up a regular block, and they'll be none the wiser. So as long as that drop down is far enough for them to take enough fall damage, this could be a quick way to kill them off. You could even use a hopper underneath the carpet and collect all their stuff for you. Then it's just too easy. This is my super smelter, and with the size of it, you can probably guess that it does a pretty good job of smelting. And you would be right, but don't expect a 100% return, since the truth of the matter is that with this super smelter, when I'm smelting my friends' items, I do give them their stuff a lot faster than they would have gotten it otherwise. There just might be a few of their items that got siphoned off in the process. Now we're not only getting paid the fee for using our super smelter, but also a few things that maybe got a little bit too overcooked in the process. After all, you wouldn't want to give them bad goods, we'll just hold those into our personal chests. This trap might seem dumb, but that's what's so beautiful about it, since all you have to do to set this up is go next to your friend's portal and then dig a 4x1 hole as deep as you'd like, so that when your friend thinks they're running up to their portal, they're actually just gonna fall into this pit and die on the dripstone. And folks, the dripstone is the key part here, because just by falling onto one of these tiny little spikes, that'll double the damage that you would have taken by just falling onto a regular block. And come on, it worked well enough for Clown Pierce to fall for it, and in my book, that's plenty proof that it's gonna work on any of your other friends as well. If it works for the best, it'll work for the rest. When you're inside, this elevator feels like it could go on forever. And apparently that's more than true, since what's happening here is that when we press this button, it isn't the floor that's going up through the elevator, but rather the walls that are coming down. Sure enough, if this user shows off with a little bit of command block trickery and some distinct patterns, we can make it seem as if we're constantly going up this elevator shaft. But when you step outside, it turns out that nothing's actually moving. And while this illusion only really works if you're standing on the inside, it is still pretty cool to watch from the outside as well, almost like a barbershop pole illusion. If you fly an elytra near my base, this happens. And how do we trigger this? Well, silly as it may seem, we have a cow on top of a pressure plate and unloaded chunks. Then when a player flies nearby, it steps off, and the rest is history. Here's how to make your friend's house a homie. Since most people have windows or openings, that you could very easily add some big eyes or a mustache to their build. And it's a lighthearted way to give them a laugh next time that they visit their base. You can even do what we've done in the past, where you make the house into a looking eyes illusion, where you stand from this point, the eyes are looking at you here, and walk underneath, and they'll still be looking at you. It's a great way to make their build come to life, literally. When we talk about resources, we're usually picturing things like valuable minerals or maybe common building blocks. But folks, that's only scratching the surface. And if you want to get the best of your friends on the server, every little bit counts. So if they're foolish enough to leave enchanted items in a chest just standing there, whether at a farm or not, then why not take them out and put them through a grindstone instead? That way, we profit off the extra bits of EXP while they get left in the dust. I mean, it's something small enough where people won't care in the moment, but once we jump ahead to having a fully enchanted suit for ourselves, then they'll realize their mistake. When someone decides to go AFK in a common place like their base, they feel pretty safe. That is, until you came around and decided to rearrange multiple different choice things around the base. Whether that's moving the chest from the left wall to the right, changing out their block palette, or my personal favorite of flipping the entire thing upside down. Whatever you choose to do, this is definitely a great way to confuse your friends when they come back. And if you want to take on an early lesson in gaslighting, you can just play it off like nothing ever changed. Forget using a bow and arrow to kill your friend, since if we were to use a bit of gunpowder and paper, we can make our crossbow even more deadly. Loading up a firework with the max number of firework stars, we can load this into our crossbow and unload a whole bunch of damage into your friend. And if you doubt the effectiveness of this, I'll remind you that fireworks are strong enough to kill the wither, so they should be plenty fine for your friend as well. And hey, at least they'll go out with a light show. This is a snow block, this is a powdered snow block, and this is a powdered snow block death trap. With the way that Carves designed this, if we bounce a player up and down on a slime block like so, they can't mine fast enough to escape the snowy situation. Even an enchanted netherite shovel can't do the trick, it's that bad. And by adding blocks like crafting tables and furnaces around the perimeter, they can't even right click to escape. Ouch. Everyone knows that when you break all the logs in a tree, the leaves should disappear, but that doesn't explain why these are still left standing hours after the trunk. And no, this doesn't have anything to do with update suppression or changing the random tick speed, but rather, we just replace the leaves on our friends' trees with ones of our own. Then, once we place them back down, these decoration blocks can no longer despawn over time, which not only gives them an eyesore, but it also guarantees a couple of chores for them to clean up. Tinted glass is a very popular block to use now at mob spawners, which I think is too bad for our regular stained glass, and that's how we're gonna fix it. Since if you use black stained glass in place of their tinted glass, they look visually very similar, except for one key difference, being that the black stained glass actually doesn't stop the light level from coming in. And at that point, they'll be very confused as to why their spawner farm stopped working, since even though it visually looks the same, it's just that little bit of light level that's able to throw the whole thing off. But it's their fault for needing a view in window. If your friend's AFK at a mob farm, then they're practically setting themselves up for disaster. I mean, there's already a steady stream of mobs coming through, so why not take those hostiles that they're taking advantage of and instead redirect them so that they spawn next to the player. After all, one of these farms kill thousands of zombies over time, so it's only fair that the zombies themselves get to settle the score. All we need is a few spider eyes, and we can make one of the deadliest traps for your friends. Since by brewing up a mix of 3 potions, an instant damage 2 pot, slowness 4, and poison 2, we can cram all of those together in a dispenser, and then use this player detection model using a carpet over a redstone ore, so that when they walk on top, they'll be quickly greeted by death from all directions. And since potions can hurt players even through armor, this might be the simplest way for you to bring your overpowered friends down to their low point. And hey, you can even brew up multiple potions at the same time, so you'll have plenty of chances to get it right. If you've messed around with gaming glitches, you're probably familiar with the concept of a soft lock. That is, where the game is still playable, but the player can't make any more progress. And while that's usually a sign of lackluster playtesting, today we'll be using it for quite the prank. Now, pulling this off might be tricky, but the idea hinges around getting your friend to set their spawn respawn in a bed that's underneath the end portal, which after that means they can only respawn in the end dimension, with no hopes of escape. And I think that fits our soft lock criteria. Anvils are great, but they can quickly get problematic. And I think we're all familiar with this message that the cost has gotten too expensive. It's a rough sight for sure, but one we can use to prank our friends. Now, if your friend is reckless enough to leave their tools lying about in a chest or an item frame, then that's your perfect opportunity. In that case, we grab the tools and then change them up a bunch to drag up the costs. Then when done, you make it look like the original, and they'll be quite surprised next time they go to repair and they can't even do it. Anyone who's ever played on a server without one player's sleep added in knows just how painful AFK players can be. Because sure enough, they're not sleeping, and after a while that means you can't sleep, causing phantom problems for everyone on the server. But what's so cruel about it is that if they have a roof over their heads, they're not even dealing with the repercussions. So to show your AFK friend just what they're putting you through, why not take a little bit of the roof off and watch as they finally meet the mobs that they introduced you to. And from there, I'll leave it up to you whether you decide to let the phantoms kill them or just teach them a lesson. Setting up an automatic system in Minecraft can take a lot of work, so what better way to take down your friend than by ruining one of their machines? Auto-smelting arrays are a great pick for this, because it's so easy to put a non-smeltable block like dirt up into the top funnel and completely ruin their design. And since it's not immediately obvious, they'll be so confused when they go to try and do an actual smelting job and just find that nothing's cooking up for them. Redstone is a real resource to have in your survival world, and while it allows us to make a bunch of great things, those things also come with a bunch of mining to do. So to save yourself from another trip down to the caves, then why don't we stick to the surface level solution? Literally. That is, if your friend already has a redstone build, then that's a solid supply of dust and repeaters just lying around, waiting to be grabbed. Or if you want a nicer way to steal, then figuring out a way to make the redstone compact that still leaves it up and running can let us shave the extras off the top and keep them satisfied as well. The death and loading screens are a staple in Minecraft, and they're so commonplace that by this point, no one's surprised by them. But we can use that to our advantage. Taken after this user, we can make a giant version of the respawn screen in our creative world, and with the help of map art, we can make this even more convincing. Then, after we place these down at spawn, we can fool anyone who respawns into seeing yet another respawn screen when they least expect it, letting us watch from the sidelines and get quite the laugh while we're doing it. When you're getting ready to give your friend a tour of your base, we're just gonna have them jump down this redstone trapdoor into the entrance to your base. I mean, why wouldn't they jump? There's water down there, must be safe. That is, until we push a button while we're down below that sends a redstone signal so that a brown mushroom will get filled up with bone meal and create a roof over the water that they were supposed to land on. I mean, this is basically the same thing that Dream did at the bottom of the ravine in the Manhunt, except way more technical, and reusable too. Just not reusable on the same friend. I doubt they'll be jumping down any other things after you pull this on them. Pranking your friends is a rite of passage on a multiplayer server. And hey, we're plenty guilty of that as well. So to give them a run for their money, why don't we hit them where it hurts? Their diamonds. See, by using a few item frames and map art, we can create a pretty convincing diamond ore. Or at least convincing from this side, since when you walk around to the other end, it's proven fake. And by that logic, we can make just about any decoy block in the game that we dream of, which offers quite the surprise if you ask me. Here's how to kill your friend with an elytra. The answer comes down to fireworks rockets, but not these ones. Rather, these ones. And while they look ever so similar, there's one key yet deadly difference between them, which is if you were to craft up fireworks rockets using fireworks stars, then visually they look the same. And as long as they don't read the item description, if they try to fly with these fireworks star rockets, it's gonna get pretty deadly pretty fast. And just that initial liftoff is almost enough damage to kill an unarmored player. So if they're spamming rockets to try to escape from your base, this will bring them back down to earth and put them 6 feet under. Your friend's base should be the safest place in their world, which is why we're gonna ruin that. And the most straightforward way of doing this is just to remove the light sources from their base. That way we're able to get plenty of mobs to spawn inside. But if you want even better results for this, you could use those light sources that you stole from their base, use them to light up neighboring caves around their house. That way, any hostile mobs that try to spawn are only going to be able to spawn inside of your friend's house. And that should give them more than a few unwanted visitors. Now, in most cases, I think the Curse of Binding enchantment is a pretty lame prank. But where you can really put this to use is by putting the Curse of Binding enchantment on a carved pumpkin. Yeah, for some reason, Mojang was devious enough to let this work. Meaning that if you use a dispenser to put this on your friend's head, they're never going to be able to get it off. Or rather, they're not going to be able to get it off in any kind of nice fashion. Either they choose to live out life where they're practically blinded, or they're going to have to end themselves pretty quick. Maybe it's just me, but whenever I play in an SMP, one of my friends always turns into a cold-hearted businessman. So if some of you out there are the same and you're looking to fulfill that entrepreneurial lifestyle, this is the one for you. You see this AFK friend? Well, that's our supplier. All you gotta do is kill them, collect their stuff, and then put it into a shop at spawn. Just like that, you got a whole bunch of stuff to sell. And fortunately for you, a customer that just happened to lose all their items. Which means that when they try to buy their items back, you can sell them at the most absurd prices. So either they buy it back, or they might just start at square zero. Nothing beats the comfort of your own bed, but with a machine like this, we can turn those sweet dreams into straight up nightmare fuel. And to set it up, we've got a couple of different options, but all of which are based around a manipulation of the respawn mechanics to make sure that our friends always wake up in a lava bath. So while prisons like Pandora's Vault are a lot more flashy, this cuts down to the basics and works just the same. So I'd suggest checking your next bed very carefully. If your friend uses any cobblestone in their paths, then this is the perfect way to make them lose their sanity. You see, by setting up a cobblestone generator with pistons right underneath one cobblestone block, then after every so interval, it'll pop up a new cobblestone block out of the floor, meaning they'll walk by, get confused, and break it, only to find the same block is back the next morning. And since most of the time they'll just break the top block and not look beneath, this prank is great for causing long-term stress to your poor pal. If you have a friend who always pranks you in Minecraft, well, first, thank them on my behalf for watching our videos, and secondly, this is the perfect recipe for revenge. See, for this, you need to sneakily lead their pet into a deep mine, and here we then use a glitch to remove the bedrock of this small room, and then by adding in a lead so that we can dangle the animal here in the middle of the room, and then you can have your friend come in and see why you're never pet sitting again. Now, it's true, sometimes traps are about sending a message, and sometimes that message is a pop-up TNT railgun being used to scare the daylights out of anyone who comes nearby. Now, this trap can go indoors or outdoors, and it's completely flush with the floor, and uniquely, it can also target the triggered location from range. So rig it to point at whatever doorway's pressure plate, and you've got yourself the world's most roundabout landmine. And while not the most practical, or maybe the healthiest form of communication, do we really need a reason to launch a TNT cannon at our friends? I think the concept justifies itself. 1.15 got a lot of different people excited for the buzzing bee mob, and while I gotta fully admit that they are adorable, they can be used as a tool of evil. Case in point, if you went through the effort of trapping a bunch of bees underneath your friend's floorboards while they're AFK, then when they log back in, not only are they going to be treated to a horrible sound on the eardrums, but also when they break a hole to go check out, they might just hit one of the bees, and then all of a sudden, the entire swarm is going to be directed right at them, making it both a terror to listen to and to be on the receiving end of. Walking through walls sounds like quite the superpower to have, but doing that without glitches should be impossible, or it was until this user's discovery. See, by using these immersive portals, we can give off the illusion of walking through a solid mirror, and while pulling this off might require some prior knowledge of the mod in question, as long as you light the portal properly and add in the glass, we can still walk through as planned, letting you trade places with yourself and likely leave a group of confused bystanders when you do, which is well worth trying out, trust me. Chickens can be pretty annoying. After all, they keep laying eggs, so usually we just end up with way more of these items than we need, but in this case, we can use that to our advantage. See, for our master plan, all we need to do is load up a bunch of chickens on a hopper like so, and then every time they lay an egg, it's fired out of a dispenser in a hidden location. Place this at your friend's base, and before they know it, they'll be inundated with baby chickens, all the while confused about where they came from. This trap is completely invisible, since by using the moving piston block, formerly called block 36, we're able to keep falling block entities from going back into solid form, which means that we can keep falling blocks sitting right in place with no collision box. And from there, as soon as the player walks over it, they're just gonna fall through, without even noticing what happened. And while the methods for getting block 36 are pretty complex, such as using end crystals in conjunction with pistons, as soon as you find out how to get one of these, the only thing left for you to answer is how do you kill them once they fall through? Because with this design, it's almost a guarantee that they will. I'd venture that in most people's worlds, horses don't get a lot of use, but what they lack is a form of travel, especially when compared to the elytra, they more than make up for as a status symbol. And that's even more true when they're fitted with a rare piece of horse armor. So to take your friend's prized steed down a peg, we might need to fill in a facade. By using dyed leather horse armor, we can get pretty close to the iron and gold variants that they're used to. And if you want to be extra dubious, then it is always possible to swap out their horse for one that has the same pattern. And that way we can steal both their stats and their status. If you're feeling guilty about stealing your friend's stuff, it might put you at ease to see just how little they'll notice it when it's gone. Case in point, sneak a barrel block behind their chest like so. If you tuck it just right, it's barely noticeable, but we can still reach around the edges to use it as usual. Then subtly move the items from the chest back to the barrel behind it. And then if you come back later and see that the stuff's still there, then I take that as a good sign that it's probably nothing they'll miss. Or at the very least, it's not urgent. And that proof of concept might be enough to put your mind at ease. And if you don't want to be the one holding the netherite axe when you kill your friend, no worries, get a zombie to do it for you. Since a zombie that's holding a sharpness 5 netherite axe is fully capable of one-shotting an unarmored player. And trust me, it's pretty scary to have to deal with one of these. Even if you do have armor, they don't have nearly as much of an attack cooldown. So get too close and the rest is history. My friend set up this enderpearl stasis chamber to get himself out of danger, but with a few arrows, we can make that into the opposite. See, if we just drop a handful of arrows bouncing right where we know they'll teleport, we can make sure that whenever whenever they get back, it'll be a real surprise. And to get rid of even the most stacked of players, take after this user Malorum and add some TNT minecarts to seal the deal. Here's how iron helmets can be one of the most annoying items in Minecraft. Since taking a page out of Recrap's book, if we placed down 1,000 helmets inside of your friend's base, placing them inside of item frames, armor stands, and every chest that they have, it's gonna take a long time to clean up. For one, helmets aren't stackable, and even the armor stands only stack up to 16, which is itself very annoying. And while it seems like it would cost a lot of iron to do this, that is true, but it's also not like the iron that they're gonna get out of it is very usable. Once you have diamond armor, whoever needs an iron helmet? And the most you can get out of these is just a couple of measly iron nuggets, which is a far cry from the 5 iron ingots that you were spending otherwise. So if you have a proper iron farm and the time to set this up, it's a really effective prank to play on your friends. Now, using sea lanterns and snow-covered maps is already a famous way to trap your friends. An infinity room, a matrix room, whatever you want to call it, it's been done before. And while I still fully love this design, there's still more we can do with this. Like, for example, what if we trap them in a different color? All of a sudden, that white infinity room of nothingness turns into a blue screen of death. Anyone who plays on Windows is already pre-programmed to get a shock of horror when they see this shade of blue on their screen, so it's a pretty good way to give them a jump and a startle when they come back onto the server. At this point, you've probably seen this prank of placing a whole bunch of bamboo around side your friend's base. And don't get me wrong, that alone is good enough. Just breaking all those bamboo is gonna cause a lot of lag. But what if we want your friend to be extra careful while breaking all that bamboo? Where here, we would put anvils on top of some of the pieces of bamboo, so that as soon as one of them falls a little too close to your friend, they'll get quite the scare, and they'll take the rest of this cleanup a lot slower, giving you a lot more bang for your buck from the prank anyway. I mean, what fun's a practical joke if they can get rid of it so easily? At least by spending 31 iron ingots a pop, we're making them take a second. I want you all to take a look at my new house. Now, it's pretty basic from this angle, but what's really interesting about it is when we step back and yeah, I think you get the point. See, the trick here for selling this illusion is by using directional blocks that we can place sideways. So then when you build your house into a wall and then look up at it, it still looks like it would on the regular floor. Granted, you have to fly up this pathway, but from first person, that's a lot less noticeable than it is in replay mod. But just make sure that you're careful when you step outside of the front door, or rather, fall outside of the front door. You can't be too careful with this one. In real life, it's not uncommon for buildings to sink into the ground slowly over time, and so that's a reality that we're going to be adding to Minecraft. We'll just be doing it in something of a time-lapse. And here, I love the idea of just terraforming a mountain over their base. Now granted, not getting rid of it, but also not making it very visible for us on the surface. But hey, if they wanted to try out an underground base, you're helping them get there. And if you want to really confuse them, you could also rebuild their entire base on top of this new mountain. Do not go in this bubble elevator. Since while it seems peaceful from here, the truth is that at the top of the elevator, we can set it up in such a way where your friend's just gonna land in lava when they reach the top. And from there, if we block the exit, there's really no escape for them. But the first question is, how do you put lava on top of a bubble elevator? After all, lava and water are like oil and water. They shouldn't mix. But thanks to a scaffolding placed in the bubble elevator, we can break off the stream from the lava and still use the speed from the bubble elevator to push them right up into the death trap. And the biggest joke of it all is that the water that they need for safety is just out of reach for them. From this angle, my skin looks fine, but in actuality, we've flipped it around so that my textures for my skin are actually played on my back, which gives you a great way to mess with your friends. And to go one step further and keep up the facade, if you play in third-person mode with F5, then you can navigate while keeping your skin properly oriented. That is, until it's time for the big reveal and your friend thinks they're doing something behind your back, only for you to have been able to see the entire thing all along. Planting trees around your base can really bring a build together, especially if you design some of them custom. That is, until your friend comes by and decides to break the bottom 2 logs of the tree trunk for a craft. And now, all you got is a bunch of eyesores. Well, to solve that problem, let's teach them a one-time lesson that the Lorax would even approve of. By setting up an observer system like such, we can have it so that when they break the log, the chop gets recognized, and then an explosion takes care of the rest. And better yet, by using TNT minecarts in this way, the detonation gets to near instantaneous levels. So, whichever log they take from you, we can make sure it'll be their last. Okay, hear me out. Pufferfish have a lot more going on than you think. While sure, most of us might only care about these things for the water-breathing potions we brew, that's not the whole picture. Actually, that's about the only positive they offer up, because the rest of the time, they're a tool for evil. Don't believe me? Well, let's put that small hitbox to use, and I'll show you. By tucking a bunch of these poisonous pests underneath the trap door, we're fully capable of making a sneaky floor weapon. So if you want to keep some of those house guests from going out of line, then just throw a couple of these into the floor plan, and the message will be clear. The best way to pull off something evil is to pretend it's a good deed. I mean, even the Greeks knew that was a good idea. So to use our form of a Trojan horse, we'll need to secure a creeper companion. From there, lead it towards your friend's chest, have it explode, and then, when you offer to help put the items back, simply pinch the ones you'd like to keep. I mean, they'll be caught in such a frenzy that they likely won't notice a few items gone missing, especially if the creeper happened to explode a tower of chests like this one. So it's a win-win. We seem like a good friend, all the while we pull off our heist. Spawning the wither makes for a pretty good prank, but it's also pretty destructive, and you don't want it to go around and then destroy your stuff after it destroys your friends. And here's how to get all that same scare without having to do any of the cleanup that's associated with it. All you have to do is act like you're gonna spawn the wither in the middle of your friend's house, but just make sure that you're placing the soul sand blocks above any non-air block. It could be something like torches, grass, string, carpet, whatever. As long as it's not air, any of those will keep the wither from actually spawning. Or you could also place down the 3 skulls of the wither formation first, and then put in the T-shape underneath it. That'll also stop it from spawning, since the game only checks if the skull is one of the last blocks placed, which should give you just the right amount of scarecrow to be able to scare your friends. And hey, if it doesn't work, you can always just break one of those skulls and build it the right way. That's sure to scare them. Truth be told, pranks in Minecraft are a lot easier than in real life, but that doesn't mean there isn't any overlap, and this is a great mix of the two. See, in the real world, we usually place a water cup on top of a door, but here, we could use TNT instead. And after aligning the minecarts along a chest, we can balance that 1 pixel just right to keep it steady until someone comes. And then when they open the door to step in, they'll knock the minecarts onto the powered rail, and the rest is history. Now, by themselves, these zombies aren't much of a pain, but packing a whole bunch of them, we've got something even scarier: lag. And that, folks, is the last thing you want on a server. So to give your friends a tough time, why don't we use an undead union of our own? After grabbing a bunch of zombies, lay down a pile of items, and then wait for them to pick it up. And from there, once their hands are stuffed, those suckers aren't going to despawn, giving us the mobile lag machine to place right inside your friend's base. By programming a compass to a lodestone somewhere in the world, then we can place it in a chest at your friend's base and promise them awesome loot if they choose to follow it. Only when they actually end up traveling the thousands of blocks to get next to this, when they arrive, all they're gonna find is the lodestone and nothing else. And while there is a piece of netherite inside of that, it's not like it's usable. And on top of the insult to injury, they're gonna have to travel all those thousands of blocks right back home completely empty-handed. When it comes to stealing items, we never want to do anything too obvious. And with that, it means we should take just what we need and not get too greedy. Or greedier, at least. And I think this system does the trick. See, let's say your friend has a high-powered mob farm up and running, but all we need to do is just poach some gunpowder for our fireworks. Well, to be more discreet, a sorting system like this helps us out, since they'll still have the illusion of big returns, yet we can sneakily scrape together the profits that we need. And as long as they're satisfied with the bones and flesh, our machinations should go undetected. For this one, we're taking a page out of Noah's book, except we're doing it a little bit more devilishly. Since we're gonna keep 2 cows for ourselves, we're gonna kill every other cow that we can find within a reasonable part of the world. So then when your friend's desperately needing things like beef and leather, they'll be nowhere to find. And sure, you could go deal with hoglins and such, but really setting up a farm for one of those is a lot more stressful, especially early game. And at that point, we can keep our cows to ourselves, breed them in a secret location, and then sell off any leather-based good and become insanely rich. After all, it's a lot easier to monopolize the market when there's literally no market in sight left to be made. Finding diamonds in Minecraft should be cause for celebration, but with a setup like this, that excitement is short-lived. See, if you really want to prank your friends on the server, then why not head down to the mines and booby-trap the various ores? All it takes is an observer angled the right way, and we can use that block update to end their excursion. Really, it's that simple to pull off. And with a quick fuse, there'll be nothing more than a pile of items before they could even finish counting their diamonds. Lag machines do what they're supposed to. They cause everyone to lag. But what if you don't want to be a part of the lagging bunch? I mean, after all, it's less fun to appreciate if you're also suffering along with your friends. Well, luckily, the way that we solve this so that we're not suffering, only your friends are, is to use something like non-stackable items. And when we throw down all of these non-stackable items like cake onto the floor, usually that would cause everyone around it to lag. It's rendering a lot of entities. But using a client-side mod like Tweakaroo, we can disable item entity rendering entirely. And there you go. Now we won't be lagging, and your friend who doesn't have the mod surely will. Cobwebs down in the mines are annoying enough, but if you fill up your friend's house with them, then they're sure to get a little angry. The beautiful thing is that even if they have the proper tool to get rid of cobwebs, by the nature of the beast, it's still gonna take them so long to get rid of all of them. So if you take the time to fill out every nook and cranny in their house, you're basically guaranteeing they have an afternoon of cleanup. But hey, for what it's worth, it's not a destructive prank and it really doesn't have any long-term effects. Just tell them that you're installing some extra insulation, I'm sure they'll be happy with it. Unless they decide to use a macro or way down a key on their keyboard, AFK players aren't the most active. So to fix that, one of my favorite things to do is put my AFK friends inside of an AFK loop-de-loop machine like this. Through the help of slime blocks, pistons, and ice blocks, you're able to completely get them cycling around this perpetual motion machine, giving them enough motion to make sure they don't get kicked for being AFK, and you quite the spectacle to watch as they're trapped. Nobody likes mining fatigue, but it's not exactly easy to dispense that effect onto your friend. Although, if you're really looking to put the effort in, then why not hijack an Elder Guardian out of an ocean monument and bring it right underneath your friend's base? As long as they're in the range of the effect, they'll get constantly hit by the mining fatigue and have no clue where it's coming from. Meaning, if you drop one of these beasts into a nearby cave surrounded in obsidian and they have no milk to help them out, they're gonna have a tough time dismantling your trap. Here's how to turn your friend's giant piston door into way more of a domino effect. Since by just taking one of the pistons inside of the giant redstone or slime honey block door and turning it around, then all of a sudden, all the slices of the door aren't moving in sync, which can then cause them to stick together and seize up the entire contraption, until eventually you have a cascading effect and the entire door falls apart. I mean, it's their fault for having that fancy of a door for their vault. Having stuff to put inside the vault's already a flex. You don't need to also show off on the door to keep people out. Wooden bases lend themselves so well to being disrupted, but a casual way to get on your friend's bad list might just be by stripping the logs accidentally in their builds. The good thing about this is that it's easy to write off as a mistake, but it definitely still leaves hideous blotches in your friend's block palette. Meaning with just a couple misclicks, you can just as easily have them spending their time having to fix your errors. Everyone knows the most exciting part of a roller coaster is the sudden drop. So to treat your friend with that and give them quite the prank, what we could do is tuck a few activator rails inside of their minecart roller coaster so that when they roll over, they'll activate a system to then break out the track from underneath them. It's sure to be more than a little bit surprising. And while you could just have this fall into a different minecart track or something to keep them safe, I will also mention that dripstone could do the trick as well. But at that point, you're more of a revengineer than an engineer, and definitely not an imagineer. I doubt any tracks at Disneyland are going to be doing this anytime soon. When your friend logs onto this server, as far as they know, nothing's changed. At least, nothing's changed yet. But by installing a data pack like this one by Gaming Barn, we're able to morph into different mobs in Minecraft, much like we've been able to do with morph mods in the past. Except this is pure vanilla. Your friend doesn't have to have anything installed on their end. And that's why they'll never expect it when you start to hide in with their cows and sheep. And at that point, you can get as crazy with this as you want. Whether that's hiding in their pig pen and giving them a slap when they come and try to kill you, or running away from them when they try to saddle you up and ride you as a horse. I mean, really, there's over 80 mobs in Minecraft that you could do this with, so the possibility for some great pranks are there. It's just up to you to choose which one. If your friend's an introvert, then it's your responsibility to introduce them to new people. And while you could do that by inviting a bunch of new friends and players to the server, I think a much simpler option is just by trapping a whole bunch of villagers next to them. These mobs know how to party, and anyone who's ever played Minecraft with sounds on know that they love to talk. So they're just sure to get your friend busted out of their shell. So either they'll have to push their way through the crowd or decide to kill the party a little too soon. And while both of those work, one of them might just make the Iron Golem bouncers a little angry when they get outside. When you're designing a trap, nothing ruins the fun quite like an MLG water bucket save. These things are like a Deus Ex Machina. They remove all of the tension from the scene, and they get really boring when they're overused. So to prevent someone's water bucket from raining on your parade, then why not find some way to soak up the source? And no, I'm not talking about sponges, but rather something a little bit more inconspicuous. You see, by having a half slab flipped like such, it looks just like any other block. But to their surprise, whenever they try to MLG, the water goes right to the bottom and they'll just hit the floor like regular. So really, if you want to catch a pro, this is the way to go. If blowing up your friend's house seems like a good idea, but you don't want dirt on your hands, then here's how to get away clean. Because as you can see, it wasn't you that caused all those holes, it was just a bunch of creepers. And of course, since you didn't have the blocks, you didn't happen to fill them in. Any of them. And trust me, after a while of these creeper holes stacking up, they're gonna hope that one day you step a little too close to that creeper and both of their problems wash away in an instant. Here's how to flip your friend's world completely upside down. Literally. We could prank your friend so that when they go back to visit their animal pen, it's completely on the roof. And honestly, I think this looks good enough to just actually have it be the animal pen. It just might be a little tough to breed the new ones. But overall, a harmless prank, and it's good for a laugh. My friend's been waiting days for this copper to oxidize, but little does he know, it never will. See, if we just go by and honeycomb a few pieces of copper blocks here and there, it'll be virtually impossible to see what's going on until you pick it up. Or if you want to cause them even more confusion, use a channeling trident with an item frame to purposefully electrify some of their blocks back to full health. That way, we'll be the only ones on the server with a beautiful oxidized roof. No matter where we stand, this crocodile will always be looking at us. And that's because of the illusion of depth. See, the same way that this trick works in the real world, you'll notice that when we get up close, what's happening here is that the face is hollowed out in such a way where with just a few walls, we're able to give the illusion of a turning crocodile head regardless of where we're standing. Clearly, hoppers are a great asset for getting stuff out of containers, but while they're effective, they're not always discreet, and that can cause a big problem for sneaky operation. So to fix that and stay in the shadows, we'll need some different options. Now, maybe that's putting a hopper under a furnace or a barrel instead of a chest so that they can't see the pixels around the edge. Or perhaps you change out their chest for trapped ones so that they can't see any items getting sucked out when they open it, but it'll all funnel out the same when they close it. And really, either of those options will put us leaps and bounds ahead of the regular crooks. Clearly, Minecraft doesn't obey the laws of physics, but even if the game doesn't, there's a certain expectation that you should, which is why if you go around leaving floating trees everywhere around your friend's base, you're sure to force the neat freaks to blow a lid. Just keep in mind that if you do this, get ready for all the lectures that come with it, because obviously they're not going to see "I just needed one log" as a logical defense, especially when it leads to such an eyesore. Picture this: it's the start of a new world, we're raiding a village with a friend, they go to kill the iron golem for some early ingots, but as they build 3 blocks tall to escape, we accidentally place a brick right here so that the golem can hit them. They suffer the consequences, and now we can grab the iron instead. Here's how to use a nether portal to teleport your friends to their demise. Since the idea here is laid out by Agent X24, is that we rig their nether portal in such a way so that when they go through, they're going to be sharing that cramped space with a couple of things of TNT minecarts and end crystals, which at that point, that cramped space is going to get a lot less occupied, but it's going to have quite the explosion while it does it. And considering the whole thing's made out of obsidian, it's also not that destructive, only to the thing you care about destroying, your friend's life bar. And honestly, imagine returning back to your base from the nether highway just to be greeted by this. If you really want to get rid of your friend's diamonds, then this will do the trick and then some. Items are entities, just like you and me. And that means that these things have a kill switch. So if you take an anvil sky high and drop it on a thing of items, it'll delete the stuff from existence. It's almost like we're creating our own kind of item execution system. If you've been playing Minecraft for a while, then the changes to ores in 1.17 definitely take some time to get used to. And I'll still find my friends smelting their silk touched ores instead of using fortune, which is unfortunate, but it gives us a golden opportunity. See, if you were to grab your friend's collected ores, whether out of a super smelter or a chest in the mines, then we can choose to use our fortune on it for a better yield. And after that, simply smelt the ones that they would have gotten anyway. Meaning if they're expecting a 1-to-1 return on their iron, they'll get as much. But that'll allow us to take the extras for profit. And now in Minecraft, we got your main hand and we got your offhand. Except which is which can change up pretty easily. Since if we go into the accessibility options tab and then switch it so that our main hand is our left hand, now we'll be confusing anyone who looks at us. Since what they think we're holding in our offhand, we're actually holding in the main hand. And as Rasplin showed off in the SMP, this could be a great way to trick someone in a trade deal. For instance, they think you're gonna throw out something valuable like a diamond, since that's in your traditional main hand, when all that you actually end up throwing out is just a block of dirt. But if you do this, just make sure to keep your actual left hand ready on the controls to move away, because as soon as they realize, they're gonna want to chase after you. Exploring with your friend can be a great bonding experience, but it can just as easily turn south. Say for example, you head into a bastion with them, and while you're going through the chest, you just loot everything without even asking them what they want. If you turn this buddy trip into a first come first serve operation, you're definitely gonna get yourself on their naughty list. Even better still is if you happen to do this while they're still fighting off the piglins. And then when they ask, just tell them there was nothing good in the chest, because by this point, there really isn't. Scaffolding is a pretty useful tool, and a big part of that is how easy it is to clean up. But as some have pointed out, that speed can just as easily be turned to the dark side. As is, if we prep something dangerous like a lava bucket or an anvil up top, then when your friend comes by to break it, they'll be treated to a nasty surprise from above. And the best part, they can't even reasonably build up the blocks to stop it. So while they try and save their stuff, you can sit back and enjoy the show. If you're falling from a great height, water's the all-star pick for safety, and we can use that idea to our favor. See, if you're looking to get even with someone on the server, this water illusion is a solid candidate to do so. As you'll notice, by making several custom maps with a water design like so, we can make a convincing spot for them to land on. Only once they aim for that puddle, they'll just break their legs on a couple of item frames, and that should be a rude awakening for sure. When you're playing on a server, lag is a common frustration, and unfortunately, some of us experience it more than others. So if you want to get back at that friend with high-speed internet, this door is the perfect prank. Now, the mechanics at play are fairly simple. All that's happening is that once they stand on the pressure plate, it only opens once they step off. And as some of us know, this is indistinguishable from a laggy server connection, meaning they'll be stuck doing this little shuffle back and forth, and they'll never be able to get inside. Inventory management is a pretty common thing for Minecraft, which is why it's gonna surprise your friend when they realize that they're not picking up any items, even though they have what seems to be empty slots. Because little do they know, while they they were AFK, you decided to fill up their inventory with these named light gray stained glass paints. While these things are not only a mouthful, they also do a great job of giving the illusion of an empty slot, but actually there's something there. And honestly, I think this is the only time we can thank Mojang for making the textures for this look so close to the actual blank slots. Another data pack that you can use to trick your friends is this one from Vanilla Tweaks. Since while the Warden itself would be pretty loud, I mean they have an attack called a Sonic Boom that kind of gives it away. If you take a name tag and rename it to Silence Me, then when you add that on top of the Warden, it'll no longer make another noise for your friends to hear. And now the only thing that'll tip them off to the Warden nearby is the darkness effect, which is definitely noticeable, but it's also definitely confusing. So I think the prank still works either way, especially if you manage to tuck one of these inside your friend's house. Then by the time they get the darkness effect and start wondering what's happening, it'll already be too late. To maintain a good farm in Minecraft, you gotta keep a strict routine. So if you want to throw off your farmhand friend's rotation, then all you gotta do is harvest their crops without sharing or replanting any of the goods. By doing this, you can very well force them back to square one on their farm. Or at the very least, you'll have made them waste a cycle of waiting, which I think none of us want to go through again. So while they're lamenting about their lost harvest, you'll be able to talk about the greatest yield you've had in your life. Running a successful shop in the server is quite literally a tough business, and it can be particularly difficult if your friends already have what you're selling. So to make our fireworks business into a necessity, we'll need to sabotage their farms. And luckily, there's some sneaky ways to do just that. By putting slabs on the floor of the creeper farm, we can make sure that no more of the mobs spawn, which from there they'll have no way to get their ingredients, and we can ride their bad luck right to the bank. Being buried alive is a pretty common fear, and rightfully so, but what if we tried to replicate this in Minecraft? If your friend decides to step away from the computer for an hour, then that gives you just enough time to bury them into a hole, cover them up with blocks, and then build whatever you want on top of it. Now personally, my favorite is to place an entire build limit height pillar of sand on top of them, because there you got one of two options. Either it's going to suffocate them if they don't have the tool, or it's going to wear down plenty of their shovel. Now, I don't know about you, but on my world, exposed target blocks are a rare sight, meaning that as soon as someone sees one, you can guarantee that an arrow is going straight for the center. But this time, instead of a bullseye, they'll be treated in Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And in this case, that reaction is a poison arrow headed straight for their torso. Is it cruel? Well, it's hard to say they didn't ask for it. And maybe now they'll think twice before they act. Now, by design, AFK players don't get to do much. So if you want to take your friends sightseeing, then there's no better way to do it than by building a one-way elevator right up to build limit. Whether you use pistons, a flying machine, or more likely a bubble elevator with soul sand, it's completely possible to ship them right up to the top of the world, and if you want to, you can leave them there stranded. Finding a mushroom fields biome is a really lucky find, so it hurts especially bad if your friend comes by and kills all your mushrooms so you're no longer able to repopulate. And at that point, it's time for us to get revenge. And so, why not use some of the mushrooms that are still left at our base to then ruin their own base? See, by placing mushrooms in hidden spots of their base, like the gaps between their walls and floors, we're essentially creating an automatic way to annoy them, since the mushrooms will then spread on their own throughout the base, giving them a never-ending cleaning job. And what's best is that it's so random to do this prank that they're probably not even going around and looking for the source mushrooms of the problem. They just think that someone's coming through and placing them down manually. But one thing worth noting is that the area has to be dark enough for them to be able to spread, a light level of 12 or less. Casinos don't have a great reputation, but despite that, people still go back to them every single day. See, it's not our fault if they opt into playing our sleazy game. I mean, it does offer a great prize and all, but while they think they have a chance, the truth is that the machine is only designed to give back lesser rewards with nothing great in the rotation. And as long as they don't check out the redstone behind the curtain, this is sure to be a valuable lesson for them to learn. Or at least, it'll be valuable to us. At first glance, nothing looked dangerous about this. And really, that's true. Nothing looks dangerous about it, but the only reason is because we used a texture pack to switch out the TNT texture to look like other blocks. And now, when your friend comes over and puts on the texture pack to play some mini games, they're not going to be aware that all the grass blocks that they're standing on top of is actual TNT. And if you think this is too crazy to work, Planet Lord used this on Wreckcrap, and Wreckcrap's one of the most skeptical people that I know. So what your friend thinks is just some regular stone and spruce blocks, as soon as you flip the switch or ignite it with flint and steel, they're gonna be a little confused when that stone starts hissing. Now, when you want to send a message to an AFK player, there's a couple of different ways to do it. Now, most obvious is probably doing it through something like Discord, but if you want to get a bit more creative, you can ditch the sign and instead use a named mob to actually kill them with a death message. Just like that, when they log back in, they're sure to see a respawn screen labeled perfectly with whatever you name the monster. Well, that's just one example. There's plenty of different ways to get your friends surprised when they log back in. Dying is one thing, but adding insult to injury, yeah, that's gonna hurt a lot more. When your friend goes AFK, that's our turn to bring out the fishing rod. Since with the help of one of these, we're able to bring your friend up way sky high, until after a few attempts, we can actually place them on top of a TNT block like this. Now, right now, that TNT block is a solid ground, but it's not gonna stay that way. Since when we sit on top a few blocks above and aim at them with a flame bow, then as soon as they log back in, we can shoot the block underneath them, and if the fall damage doesn't kill them, the block and TNT falling on top of them should be enough to do the job. Even if they manage to survive this with a water bucket, TNT still does damage even if it doesn't break blocks around it, meaning even the most prepared of players are still in for a rude awakening when they come back in. Netherite armor makes it tough to kill your friend, and enchanted netherite makes that job nearly impossible. But the key word there is nearly, since with the help of pointed dripstones, we are able to kill through full netherite. We'll just need to be creative about it. And for this example, we have a fake slime block elevator that actually just serves as the killing chamber. And once they get in the minecart, what's actually gonna happen is 3-pointed dripstone is gonna take them down, which might seem cruel, but the way that I see it, this is an even better elevator. Instead of taking to the second floor, takes us straight up to heaven. And might I mention, at a record pace. We all like to live out our lives vicariously through Minecraft. Or maybe it's just me. But what if there was a trap to prevent you from even playing? Well, by stacking 5 boats on top of each other like this, the Minecraft servers will think that you're flying if you walk on top of the stack, therefore kicking you from the server entirely. You can force your friends to leave the game for good, and finally get them to go outside and touch grass, giving us some peace and quiet, and giving them the opportunity to go take a break. In Bedrock Edition, there's currently a glitch that can let you do some devilish things. By doing this and then having the piston retract, we can instantly teleport your friends to -2 in the world height. So for those of you not playing on Java, I'm sure you could find some kind of good trap to teleport them into. Or really just having them teleport into a nothing room like this is already a shock enough. But if you want to go a little further with it, then use any of the other traps on this list in conjunction with this, it's gonna be quite the surprise. Anyone who's ever tried to escape a cave system that's underneath an ocean knows the pain of this one. Because really, if you want to trigger some frustration amongst your friends, then all you gotta do is just trap them in this short staircase and flow water from the top. Especially if you're playing around in versions before the aquatic update, then they're gonna have to slowly meander up every single block to get up to the top. It's quite the punishment, but hey, it's not like they're gonna drown or anything, so it's pretty safe to pull off. Resource packs can be such a huge help in Minecraft, but if you're more in touch with the dark side, they can just as easily be used as tools of mischief. Like say for example, you give your friend this texture pack that makes all diamond ore look like stone. That way, when they head down into the mines, they just think they're the most unlucky person alive. While at the same time, they're just leaving all of these diamonds in their wake. Meaning at that point, you can just fall into the mines after they're done and pick up all the diamonds that they left behind. After all, they did all the heavy lifting, it'd be a shame if it went to waste. Usually, you have a minuscule chance of getting struck by lightning, but with this machine, it's a guarantee. See, by setting up a copper lightning rod with a channeling trident, we can bounce it up and down to create an infinite lightning generator, at which point, it's obvious we're going to be using this on your enemies. And thankfully for us, these strikes have a wide area of effect, meaning that even when they start to escape, you can still deal the final blow. Living in a desert has its benefits, but lush greens just aren't one of them. And seeing as leaves we bring here will desaturate to the biome's color map, our garden looks a little bland, or it would be if it weren't for azaleas. See, when we shear the leaves off an azalea tree and place them down in another biome, they don't change color with the location, meaning we can have the illusion of fresh trees grown right out in the desert. And while your friends wonder why their oak trees look worse than yours, we'll have quite the oasis to see. While there are plenty of different ways to move around your AFK buddy, one of the best ones might just be sending them to an entirely different dimension. If you got the time and the obsidian to set this up, then you can actually build a full nether portal around them, ship them over to the other dimension, and then break the portal on the other end. From there, you're guaranteeing that as soon as they log back in, if they're not prepared with obsidian, they've got no way to get back to the overworld. This is the deadliest cave in Minecraft, and even though it looks safe from above, as soon as our player gets into position, then what happens here is that the floor comes out from under them, and because we broke bedrock, the only choice they'll have is to fall right into the void. And then if we were to seal it up with a block with a high mining time, like netherite in this example, it's not possible to come back up, even if you have an elytra. And as long as it's sealed flush with the bedrock as well, they can't even place any blocks or trying to support themselves, meaning they've only got one choice out of here, and it's not a pretty one. Storage organization is one of the less glamorous parts of Minecraft. I mean, who wants to sit and look at a chest inventory screen their whole day? So if your friend did put in the hard hours and managed to make their chests look all pretty and nice, then a surefire way to get them angry is to mess with their storage organization. After all, it's a more abstract, naturalistic piece than whatever they had going on earlier. And it can guarantee that as soon as they try to open up their chest and find something, you'll send them into a combination panic attack and headache. Having an armor dispenser like this is a big flex, except not when you have this one. Since if your friend were to only take the time to look inside, they'd notice that what actually happens here is that they're coated in lava, which is then next to some hidden waterlogged blocks, meaning after you use the system, you're going to be quickly encased in obsidian, and that'll suffocate them before they can mine themselves out. And considering that this kind of system is typically used by someone who's new to the world or recently died, the odds of them having a diamond pickaxe fast enough to get themselves out of there is close to 0, meaning that if they just died, they're probably going to be dying again soon. I grief my friend's house, or that's what they think. But the truth actually is that what you see here is not their base, but rather a clever decoy to trick them. After painstakingly rebuilding their house block for block, we can grief it with the usual fire, lava, TNT, you know the works, and then send them screenshots to send our friend into a panic. From there, they log onto the server and get utterly confused as to why it's not in ruins. If you're jealous of your friend's set of armor, but you're not looking to jump to stealing just yet, then there's a different way to make it disappear, and of course, that's Curse of Vanishing. By adding one of these evil books to each piece of their armor, you're pretty much guaranteeing that they won't wear it out anymore. Because if you run the risk of the armor disappearing upon death, then even the best netherite can seem like a complete dud. If you find that your friend's been getting a little too cocky about their building skills, here's how to get back at them. Now, lucky for us, Minecraft doesn't have zoning laws, which means that a simple way to devalue their pretty house is to build the complete opposite right next to it. By throwing together a mix of dirt pillars and all kinds of junk right next to it, you'll give them quite the sight to see out their windows. Why do we bring this end crystal to the overworld? Well, this simple setup makes for an inescapable death trap. See, after using a lot of pistons in the end, we can push the dragon's respawn crystal through the portal and tuck it into a hole. From there, you have your friend fall in, and they'll be stuck with no way out. Bad traps stick out like a sore thumb, which is why if you see a random pressure plate out in the open, most of us know not to step on it. But that's the whole point of this. You see, we want our victim to expect that it's trapped, break the pressure plate, and then the real trap goes in motion. The item is then sucked up by the hopper minecart, goes into a real hopper, and then a comparator sets off a signal, and the rest is history. Now, while you could be more cruel here by adding in more TNT minecarts, I think this actually could work really well in a rigged desert temple. That, folks, would be a surprise for sure, and one that's likely to leave them with no items to their name. Moss seems like a pretty harmless block, but add in some bone meal and that bit of vegetation can turn into serious devastation. And that's what we're focusing on today. As you'll see, because this block is so good at recruiting, we can wreak some serious havoc at the different bases on the server. And again, the cost is as cheap as a few stacks of bone meal, making this really easy to pull off. So while the stone hoe will make the cleanup quick, it still takes a lot of work to put back to normal. Though honestly, I think it looks quite nice. There's no point in setting a trap if your target can see it coming. So by using a shifting set of pistons ready to move the ceiling, the moving blocks won't be able to obstruct our potion dispensers, or any other projectile coming through the roof. And at that point, you can put in your favorite concoctions in the dispensers above, and trigger the activation with some kind of skulk sensors. I mean, come on, no one expects their ceiling to betray them. Let's start spitting potions of poison, harming, and slowness at them. Turtle eggs don't seem to do a lot. Like any baby, these things are quite the liability until they grow up, but that might just be our biggest asset. Since these eggs crack under the simplest bit of pressure, we can make an extremely easy trap. Just sneak one of these little guys under a thing of carpet, and then, as soon as any zombie or ne'er-do-well comes by, they'll be met with quite the surprise. One jump and that's it, and they'll start tumbling toward their doom, and you'll have one less hooligan to worry about. And now you don't have to worry about the egg or the fool. So if you got the silk touch on hand, this might just pave the way for the perfect possibility. Next time your friend goes underground, they should make sure to look at the ceiling, since if they're not careful, they could be standing under this trap, where, once activated, breaks the sign and then drops thousands of gravel on top of the player, which if you stack it high enough, it's gonna be tough for them to escape before they die, even if they were to have an instant mine shovel. Oh, and not to mention that the same setup could cause a lot of client-side lag, which is annoying, but it adds to the effectiveness. If they're slow to react, they're gonna be slow to escape too. Don't trust this boat, because even though it looks innocent enough, one bump into this thing and yeah, you get the picture. So, taken after Prank Master Grian, the way we pull this off is by having a dispenser place a double chest worth of boats on repeat into the water. And then we break the setup, wait for an unsuspecting passerby to bump or jump in, and our mess gets unloaded. So make sure you're not around when they need help cleaning up. This Minecraft dropper map is impossible, but my friend doesn't know that. And unfortunately for them, that can only end one way. Because instead of making this map super challenging, we took after Pofa and instead used invisible blocks to make it unbeatable. And the beauty is that stained glass blocks fade into the water background from up here. If you've ever felt like someone's watching you, then you know it's a creepy concept. And this example should bring out those same feelings. See, as you move around the head, the eyes will track you like so. Or at least that's what you'd think. Because with some extra depth, the redstone can move along the black background background for a scary sight. But even when you do know how they work, it's hard to say they're not effective, or at the very least, unsettling. Stealing your friends' villagers and hiding them away is a good start, but to make that prank even more sinister, then we should also hide away a few parrots too, since these will mimic the sounds of the villagers so that when they're trying to go and excavate their house to find them, they might go a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs is all I'm saying. Camouflage is a time-honored tactic. I mean, why else would chameleons exist? It's basic science, folks. So if you don't have the resources yet for an invisibility potion, this could be the time for some lizard brain ingenuity. And the execution is surprisingly simple. All we need to do is swap out our skin for one of the many camouflage ones you can find online, preferably one that actually blends in with their base and doesn't stick out, and then we can sneak behind them while they're inside to loot the goods. Is it ridiculous? Yeah, absolutely. But it worked for Technoblade, so that's enough proof for me. Just please hold the sneak key while you do it. Are you devious? Well, you've made it so far into the video, so the answer is probably yes. And in that case, you're going to want to get yourself the Frostwalker enchantment. Then, by waiting for your friends to jump under the water, with a bit of patience, you'll be able to trap them underneath the Frostwalker ice, just by walking forward. And then it becomes a fun little game where they try to escape, and you just keep moving around to ensure that they can't. I mean, hey, waterboarding sounds like fun if you don't know what the word means, so I guess it's all well and good here too. Now, if we're being honest, taking the stuff out of their chest is not the difficult part, but hiding those items once you get them is a bit trickier. So to make sure we get away with our findings, it's worth your while to take a trip up to the stars. See, chest and shulker boxes are rendered as entities, meaning if we place some of these up past the clouds next to build height, they won't be rendered from the ground below, giving us a pretty foolproof vault. Just make sure your friend doesn't follow you up that way. Otherwise, our stolen stuff might end up in the wrong hands. Or would it be the right hands? Honestly, I don't know. If you've ever taken the time to build a big project in survival, then you're well aware that certain blocks are a pain to collect in bulk, and that's usually why things like quartz and prismarine are tough to justify when you're not in creative mode. So until you get some crazy farm to automate the resources, why don't we just fuel up from your friend's foundation? I mean, using those blocks on the floor seems like a waste, especially since they could be using half slabs instead. So for that matter, what if we gutted parts of their builds and replaced it for cheaper variants? That way, both of us get to use these blocks in our builds, and they won't even notice. Setting a creeper up in your friend's base is a good thought, but if they happen to leave the area, then you do have to worry about that pesky despawning. So to remedy that, all you gotta do is name the creeper so that it stays in place. And plus, giving the creeper a name also gives you more room to mess with your friends, meaning as soon as they get home, they'll be introduced to a new friend and they'll see him out the door just as quickly. If you know that your friend plays around on lower render distances, then this is the perfect prank to play on them. All we gotta do is use a fishing rod or a bubble elevator to get them up into the world height, and then recreate skyblock up here in the sky. I guess that part's obvious. So then when your friend finally wakes up from going AFK, they'll think that they've logged on to an entirely different server. Or at the very least, they'll be very confused on how to get down. And honestly, speaking as someone who likes skyblock, I wouldn't even be that angry if you played this on me. But if you set me up where I couldn't actually build a cobblestone generator, then we'd be having a different conversation. If you use a silk touch pickaxe to break a skulk shrieker, then when you place it back down, it won't spawn a warden, which sounds like a downside, but to us, it's the ultimate benefit. Since by following after green and taking a bunch of these skulk shriekers and putting them in your friend's base, even if they're not spawning a warden, they're still gonna give off the sound like they do. And we can stack up the volume until eventually we've got up to 247 sounds playing at the same time. And the only reason we stop at 247 is because that's the literal limit for where Minecraft stops playing noises. But believe me, even at that number, that's gonna be more than enough to rupture their headphones. And because of the way that the skulk sensor gives off a redstone signal, literally every step that they're taking trying to find this, they're just gonna keep setting off that noise, giving you plenty of bang for what should have just been a useless shrieker. Villager trading is a lucrative concept, and more often than not, the person who gets the best trades winds up being the richest on the server. So to stop your friend from getting decked out in mending enchanted armor, we'll need to use a doppelganger of our own. No offense to them, but the villagers all look alike. A bold statement, I know. Meaning we could change out their librarian for one that looks the exact same and play it off pretty easily. And hey, we could even claim that there was a glitch with the server's data that caused it to reset, which might be cruel, but don't worry, we've got our own trades to worry about now. Gambling's a crooked business, and really anything you're willing to gamble, you should just assume is lost. But while you and I know that, hopefully your friends don't. And so to teach them about the dangers of it, you can create a fake gambling minigame where you can trick your friends into losing their valuable stuff. So if your friend's stupid enough to put up a netherite sword on the line, then it's their fault when they find out that the game was rigged all along and you were always just gonna be getting it from them. It was more of a donation box than a gambling machine. But hey, they should be happy. Donations are write-offs, gambling isn't. So if anything, you're just helping them on their tax return. This is my friend's house, and this is my friend's house at build limit. See, the idea behind this prank is that we use a schematic mod like Lightmatica, copy the exact look of their base, and then rebuild a new version of it way up in the clouds. And at that point, does it even count as griefing if they still have another house to live in? Well, yeah, probably so. But who knows, maybe your friend will enjoy getting upgraded to a penthouse suite. Just make sure to invoice them later. Public goods are good for the public, but not so good for your wallet. So if you're the kind of person who likes to go around building a bunch of farms for the server to use, it would make sense that you took all the upfront risk in building it and all the materials to make it. You should get a little bit of a kickback from it. So if you were to just charge players for using your farms, or even something like the roads that you built within the Nether Highway, then just having a simple toll booth could be all that you need to get all your riches back. Just make sure that you also don't pay to use these farms. Then you'll not be getting rich, you'll just be getting scammed. Picture the situation. You're bored with nothing to do, and you want to get back at your friends. Well, then there's nothing better than torturing their villagers. And we can do this quickly by building a setup like this, and then hanging them underneath fire, lava, or really whatever you'd like. Sometimes you want to prank your friends, but you don't want to put in a lot of effort to do it. And that's why you gotta use string, since all you gotta do for this to work is go inside their house and then fill up every single empty space using string, which itself is very easy to come by if you're using something like a string duplicator that's been possible in recent updates. Just place 2 string between these tripwire hooks, have water flowing on top, and when it's faced in the right direction facing north, you can flick this switch and it'll automatically create thousands of strings for you to use to then fill up your friend's base. Let me know if this has happened to you. You and your friends all agree to log on the server at the same time, and then finally, when it's time to get on, your friend doesn't happen to be there on time. Well, if that's the case, you can use this trick to get revenge. For this, you're gonna need a lot of glass, and then you can go to their house and cover everything up in layers of the stuff. And since regardless of the tool that you're using, it always takes the same amount of time to break glass, it'll be quite fitting for you to waste your friend's time seeing how they wasted yours. The Minecraft community gets obsessed with making certain things every once in a while, and for a time that was bridges, and then another time it was anxiety machines. Yeah, I guess sometimes they're nicer than others. But using one of those anxiety machines, we're able to perfectly torture your friend. See, the idea here is using a trapdoor timed in just the right way, where it'll flick open, have the creeper stare directly at your friend's face, get close to exploding, but then close right before it's able to actually go off. And if you were able to set this all up while your friend was AFK, I can't imagine anything being scarier than getting so close to blowing up, but never actually having the satisfaction of it going off. But all of that pales in comparison to the kind of anxiety this dog's going through. What Coop C42 built here is essentially an AFK machine with a whole lot more traps added to it. But while it does seem mean, it's entirely harmless to the dog. They just might want to make sure they don't accidentally unseat it at the right time. Because with a couple of sticky pistons to bounce the dog over this blue ice like so, we then can time the rest of the redstone so that we're shooting off arrows from these dispensers that just narrowly miss their poor pup. And for the final touch, we occasionally drop lava over their head. Or it would be dropping if it actually was able to fall a block, but we retract the lava so quickly with the dispensers. Again, no harm, no foul. To build this to torture your friend, you need to be so precise, otherwise the entire operation goes belly up. See, what's happening here is that we're building a feed tape that pushes the redstone and TNT along this circle so precisely that in the same tick that the redstone and the TNT block would have been aligned, it's actually done in such a way where when they're moved by the piston, they don't count as a block, but as an entity. So during that frame, it doesn't trigger to the redstone update like it normally would. But if your friend was to say, go and break this to get rid of it, then they might find out that when you don't have a piston, it's not a feed tape, it's a death trap. Let's say you've killed your friend and taken all of their valuable stuff. Well, that gives you the perfect opportunity to make this torture device. See, what's happening here is that we have all of their things scattered across these slabs like so, and then as your friend looks helplessly on from the other room, we drop a single piece of TNT right into the equation. Now, under normal circumstances, that would go off and the whole operation would lose their stuff. But right before the fuse says its final goodbye, we have a piston that's timed to retract this block and drop our TNT into a much safer thing of water. And honestly, it's kind of satisfying to watch, if it's not your stuff that's on the floor. Once we press this button, an arrow shoots out of this dispenser and lands into the end crystal that we placed inside your friend's house. Or it sure looks that way. Because as soon as we actually press this button and get your friend too scared scared to speak, that's when we have a sticky piston that double extends and puts a block directly up in front of the arrow before it would actually take out the end crystal. Now granted, the only way to get rid of an end crystal is that you're gonna have to explode it, so the best they're left with is just an awkward statue. But hey, it doesn't explode, at least not in the ways that we thought it was going to. And as far for the things that we have on this list, that's maybe one of the nicer graces we can do for them. This is one of my personal favorites because it just requires no effort at all. Now when you start a new world with your friend and you keep using the same tools for a long enough period, then, as your tools become worn down and you need to upgrade them, just keep dumping them into your friend's inventory. And while at first it might seem like an honest mistake, and you can even play it off as so, the idea of using them as your personal garbage can is pretty funny to me. And it's not really mean, it's free stuff. They could even use it to repair their tools, but it's incredibly inconvenient, especially because a lot of these things don't stack. If your friend's using a zombie or skeleton spawner for their mob farm, then the best way to make them suffer is to go into that secret mob chute and fill up that 1x1 hole with a whole bunch of cobwebs. Now granted, this doesn't break the farm, but does it slow down their rates? Absolutely. And while the farm is still technically working, it completely negates all of the fall damage that they would have taken when they reached the bottom of the chute. We all have that friend who likes to go end busting and leave no elytras or gear for the rest of us. So if you want to torture that friend, then just make sure that anytime that your friend goes into the end, you respawn the dragon using end crystals, since that'll lock the portal home. And that way, the only way you can leave is when the dragon's actually been defeated, or you die by other means. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?